Giants, towering figures striding through the myths of many cultures and in many forms. In Norse mythology, the Jötnar are often painted with this same broad brush, perceived as colossal adversaries in eternal conflict with the gods and humanity. But were they really giants? And were they really the monsters we see in movies? In the Norse cosmos, the Jötnar command both fear and awe. Far from just brutish giants, these entities are central to the Norse myths, shaping events from the world's creation to Ragnarok's devastation. Today, we journey back to the ancient Norse world to uncover the true nature of the Jötnar. We'll explore their origins and roles in mythological tales, and finally, address a question. Were Jötnar mere giants, or is there more to their story? Welcome to the mysteries of mythology, the Jötnar. Between Niflheim's frost and Muspelheim's fire lay Ginnungagap, an immense void. Here, from elemental chaos, emerged Ymir, the first Jotun. From Ymir sprang the Jötnar, who represented nature's wild, chaotic forces. The term Jötnar, or the singular Jötun, is derived from the Proto-Germanic word etunaz, which is similar to meaning to eat or consume, a nod to the raw forces of nature these beings embody. In the original Eddas, the primary sources of information about Norse mythology, Jötnar could be both giants and similar in size to the Aesir and Vanir gods, such as Odin or Thor, which aren't 100% Aesir, but we'll get to that later. They were perceived more as a different family rather than a different species than the gods. Over time, the portrayal of Jötnar evolved. The English term giant became the dominant word for describing the enemies of gods in other mythologies, such as Greek mythology. Initially revered, perhaps even feared, for their direct connection to the earth's rawest elements, they later were simplified as enemies of the Norse gods, and so inherited the description as giants. Ymir was the first being in Norse creation. He was born from the empty and endless chasm called the Ginnungagap, making the Jötun the first beings in Norse mythology. Ymir fathered a six-headed son called Thrudgelmir, who was nourished by the cosmic cow called Audumbla. Audumbla fed herself by licking the ice off of salty rime rocks, and from those rocks she revealed Buri, the first primordial god and grandfather of the Aesir. But how did Buri get in the salty ice rocks in the first place? The rock that encapsulated Buri came from the icy plains of Niflheim. Ymir and the Jötnar lineage originated from the ice of Niflheim and the fires of Muspelheim, while the gods came from Niflheim alone. But things get a little more complicated. Buri, once revealed from the icy encasements, would then father Bor. Bor married Bestla, the daughter of the Jötun Boltor, and together they became the parents of the first Aesir gods, Odin, Vili, and Ve. As the generations progressed, the tension between the primal forces of the giants and the emerging order of the Aesir gods grew. Ymir was slain by Odin and his brothers to bring order from chaos. Ymir's existence represented the chaotic and untamed nature of the universe. When Odin and his brothers killed Ymir, they used his body to create the world. His flesh turned into land, his blood into oceans, his bones into mountains, and his skull into the sky. Destruction led to creation. From his wounds flowed such an immense volume of blood that it caused a great flood, nearly wiping out all the Jötnar. Only the Jötun Bergelmer and his wife survived this deluge by escaping in a chest. They landed on the mountain of Jötunheim, which thereafter became the sanctuary and stronghold for the remaining Jötnar. This was the beginning of the division between God and Jötun. Those who followed Odin and his brothers made Asgard their new home, and those who disagreed with the brothers made Jotunheim their home. Jotunheim, the home of the Jötnar, was known as a harsh, icy place. While many think of Jötnar as frost giants, they were actually very diverse. Some were giants, but not all, and they could change form. The Jötnar were gifted in their ability to transform, the most famous of them being Loki, who would often transform into different people, animals, or objects. They were also gifted at casting illusions, as in the story of Utgard Loki, who created a series of illusions to avoid being killed by Thor. Modern portrayals often reduce Jötnar to monstrous figures, overlooking exceptions like the beautiful huntress Skadi. So this begs the question, what really made them different? If the Jötnar had a similar appearance, similar in strength, and powers similar to the gods, why weren't they considered gods? One argument was that only the gods were worshipped by men, but that wasn't always the case. We know that the Vikings worshipped Skadi, a Jötun giantess, asking for her blessings with hunting, skiing, and snow. So, that wasn't what made them different. The critical differentiator between God and Jötun was what they represented: chaos. The first Jötun, Ymir, was born from the chaos of the fires of Muspelheim and the ice of Niflheim. Everything the Jötnar did was an attempt to return the world to chaos, not to end it, but so that it could be born again. Ragnarok is the final epic battle between the gods and the Jötnar, but it doesn't mark the end of the world. It is a cataclysmic event that leads to the rebirth of the world and a more peaceful future. It's this association with chaos that makes anything outside of the kingdom and protection of Asgard called Utgard, or outside the fence. This distinguishes the difference between the order of the world of the gods and the wilderness and chaos beyond the fence. But some of the most famous Jötnar might surprise you. As we saw earlier, Odin, the All-Father as he was sometimes called, had a Jötun mother. So, if we assume that his father was 100% God, that would mean that Odin was at least 50% Jötun. This is important because Odin was known to have many children from many different mothers, and so all his children were part Jötun. Most famously was our ginger-haired, beer-bellied, hammer-wielding hero, Thor. Thor's mother was a Jötun woman, which would mean that Thor was actually 75% Jötun. So, ironically, the most famous gods in Norse mythology and the most vigorous in fighting against the Jötun were at least half Jötun themselves. Marriages between gods and Jötnar weren't just rare occurrences. They were pretty common and had a significant impact on Norse mythology. For instance, Freya, a god associated with peace and fertility, fell in love with Gerda, a giantess Jötnar. There was also the marriage of Skadi, a giantess, and Njord, a god of the sea, a marriage that came from the gods wanting to appease the giantess for her father's death. Aegir and his wife Ran were two Jötnar who lived in a majestic hall underneath the ocean and would often host great feasts for the gods. Finally, there was Loki, who, thanks to Marvel, many now see as Thor's brother, but was actually Odin's brother. Loki formed a blood bond with Odin, allowing him to walk among the Aesir in Asgard and often appear in tales with Thor and others. From Freya's union with Gerda to Skadi's marriage to Njord, these divine alliances show the dance between chaos and order, creation and destruction, that defines the Norse cosmos. The Jötnar were often seen as the enemies of the Aesir gods, continually trying to invade Asgard, defeat the gods, or take the goddesses as their wives. For instance, Jormungandr, the world serpent and child of Loki, is fated to kill Thor during Ragnarok. Fenrir, another child of Loki, is prophesied to cause great destruction, including the breaking of Mimir's well, a crucial cosmic structure. Thrym, the king of the frost giants, famously steals Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, to force the gods into giving him Freya as his bride. Thor, disguised as Freya, attends the wedding, with Loki, who is dressed as his bridesmaid, and once he has Mjolnir back in his possession, kills all the giants at the feast. In Ragnarok, the Jötnar emerge as formidable adversaries, launching their assault against Asgard, led by Loki aboard the ship of the dead. They were joined by the fiery giants of Surt and the Jötnar of Muspelheim, wreaking havoc upon Asgard and contributing to the cataclysmic unraveling of the cosmos. In the aftermath of this event, you might hastily conclude that the Jötnar were unequivocally viewed as malevolent entities by the Norse peoples. However, this oversimplification conceals a more profound truth. While the Jötnar did evoke fear and often found themselves cast as antagonists in the sagas of the Aesir, their role in Norse mythology was far from one-dimensional villains. They were vital to mythology, keeping the cosmos in balance. Central to this balance was the cyclical nature of Ragnarok, where the Jötnar played a pivotal role. Despite their seeming opposition to the order upheld by the gods, their involvement in the apocalyptic event was necessary for the continuation of existence. Ragnarok signifies not just an end, but a renewal, a destruction that paves the way for creation. In this eternal cycle, the Jötnar serves as catalysts for the rebirth that follows the twilight of the gods. While their depiction in myth and modern culture often leans towards negativity, it's imperative to recognize the symbiotic relationship between chaos and order, destruction and creation embodied by these enigmatic beings. Personally, I find the Jötnar more fascinating than Asgard's gods. Originating from the same cosmic source as the Aesir, they're often depicted as antagonists. More than mere giants, the Jötnar represent untamed natural and chaotic forces. Though tied to the gods, they remain marginalized, their complex nature as rich as that of the gods. So, were the Jötnar villains or misunderstood agents of change? What do you think? Let me know in the comments.